And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Hit Show. Along with Brian Kelly, I'm Phil McGrady. And BK, we are into the second half of this 2015 season. And I think we're going to call this, we're both kind of dressed in black, kind of a funeral episode for the 2015 edition of the Boston Red Sox, as they, there was maybe a flicker of hope, in that Yankee
before the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, they played well. They did lose 2 out of 3. One of those if they can get it to 4.5, you never know. But
it all went downhill when Ortiz refused to play first base.
That's what they say. And then, of course, that last day before the All-Star break, he comes up with some mystery flu to get him on his vacation early or whatever. So, again, the Red Sox, that's not what you want from your veteran leadership, even no matter in the darkest times. But where do you start with this team? You could start with Farrell. You can't fire the entire team. But where do you start? I mean, you couldn't really
fix it. You mean?
Yeah. Where do you start? I mean, the pitching you knew was just going to be brutally awful, and it's proven to be probably worse. But then you get these things where Napoli. Did you ever foresee that he can't even hit 200?
No.
This season.
No. I mean, I think everyone expected that Napoli was going to have a better year than he's had the last few, because he had the surgery to fix the sleep apnea, and I think a lot of people were expecting a lot out of him this year. So he's been probably the biggest disappointment on the offensive side. They came into the season with a lot of questionable guys in the rotation here, and we've seen a lot of struggles. Wade Miley, of all people, I think has pitched probably better than expected, and I believe still leads the team in wins. Of course, Buchholz was up and down and went on a great run, and all of a sudden then he gets hurt again.
As usual.
As usual. Porcello has been awful. They obviously went and extended his contract way too soon, and now they're on the hook for $20 million a year with him. I do think that he's not as bad as he's pitched, recently. So hopefully he can turn it around a little bit, in the long run. But that's now looking like an awful contract. Obviously, Pablo Sandoval, huge contract that they signed in the off season. I hated that move from the start, and now everyone's kind of jumped on that bandwagon, and you're stuck with him for a while. People rip on Hanley Ramirez as well, and you know what? If the guy was your DH, I don't think you have any complaints. He's hit. He's still got 19 home runs, and he's had some production. So
playing the field is about
been left field.
It's horrible,
awful.
And again, this all stems from Ortiz not crazy about playing first base, but you can't take this guy really out of your lineup if he's your leader, or this, that, and the other.
Well, and I think that the reason that they're kind of in a really bad place is because obviously Ortiz wants to stick around long enough to get to 500 home runs, which is not going to be till next season. So you're going to go into next year kind of with that whole situation of, we can't move Hanley to DH because we're still stuck with Ortiz. This ownership's not going to want to cut ties with Ortiz, especially in what's probably going to be his last season.
Well, they got to market his home run totals, and he's been he's doing Dunkin' Donuts commercials.
So you're looking at another difficult scenario next year, unless you can somehow convert Hanley to play a competent first base next season, which I think a lot of people expected. Hey, this guy's been a shortstop his whole career, should be able to hold down the fort in left field, and he hasn't been able to do that.
Not even close.
I don't know.
Yeah, and the Red Sox finishing out a series against the Astros, and they bring up Joe Kelly. So I think that's pretty much an indicator of
waving the white flag
is how this team is going this season. But
Brian Johnson made his debut last night. Pitched decent for a portion of the game, and kind of lost it late. What do you think about him? I mean, do you think that he is a guy that has any promise?
I mean, I think there is something there, maybe. I mean, it's hard to tell just off watching that last performance. He'll get a start this weekend against the Tigers. But some other bright spots, though. I mean, Bogart's maybe a year away.
Bogarts has turned the corner.
He's been a pleasant surprise.
Eduardo Rodriguez, too, one of the probably the lone bright spot from the pitching staff. He's kind of had some ups and downs and bumps in the road more recently, but now, certainly kid with a lot of promise.
I was going to say, this thing about tipping the pitches. This seems to be a new thing where people are saying, I know the breaking ball's coming because he always does this type of thing. And is that like prevalent? I know there's scouting that goes on in baseball, and you can kind of you can figure out what situation is going to call for what kind of pitch.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be so dramatic that you say, oh, when he touches his hat, or there's some mannerism that they're picking up on, really anticipating the pitches, I guess.
Right. Well, if that's all it is, I think that's something that the team
fixable.
should be able to correct. That's what the pitching coaches and managers get paid to do. So, his stuff seems to be there. So I don't think that's an issue. I think if it's just kind of working through that, not tipping the pitches. And they went through this earlier too, I think, in his maybe like third or fourth start. He got lit up, and they said he was tipping the pitches. They corrected it, and then he went on another good run of starts, and now I guess he's back to doing it. So he's still a young kid. I mean, how old is he? 21, 22?
Yeah, early 20, 22 maybe.
So you got to think that he's going to be a good piece, to be in your rotation going forward. And, who knows what the deal is with Buchholz, going into the future here.
I mean, the thing is, it was almost like they say if you're going to be like the ace of the staff, he crumbles under the pressure.
Buchholz, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at best he is your third, fourth starter at very best.
Yeah.
But he's proven that he is just not reliable.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and then you look at someone like Pedro Martinez. We'll talk about him in the Hall of Fame in a little bit, but physically, same type of kind of makeup. I mean, very slight builds. $170 maybe soaking wet.
What's the difference between those two guys, though?
One has heart and one does not.
The competitive edge. Yeah. Pedro, was always a guy who wanted to prove the doubters wrong and had a very competitive nature about him, and didn't back down from anyone.
Right. Also had an older brother who pitching in the league, Ramon Martinez, who I think maybe like a challenge, a little brotherly.
Well, and we've seen Buchholz is kind of the opposite, right? He tends to pitch good when the pressure's off, pitches really well when the pressure's off, but has definitely wilted when the pressure's been on.
Right.
So
and he breaks down.
And you know what? If he's your fourth starter, that's fine. I'm certainly happy with him as my fourth starter, but if you're looking at a rotation where you're stuck with Porcello now, and Rodriguez probably not quite ready to be an ace or even maybe a number two. What do you got?
I don't know. Miley. I mean, it's just this.
Miley's another guy. If Miley's your fifth starter, I'm happy with that. But if he's your 2 or 3, you're in trouble. And that's what the Red Sox have right now. That's the problem. So whether it's a Cole Hamels or whether it's a Johnny Cueto or a David Price in the offseason, they got to look at making a big splash for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, because the pitching has been atrocious this year.
But the problem is now similar to where they were 3 years ago before they made the big Adrian Gonzalez, Beckett, Kyle Crawford deal. They're back in the same spot. They spent the money on the wrong guys. Right? You now owe $15, $17, $18 million a year each to Porcello, Hanley, and Pablo. 2 of those guys you probably don't even want on your team.
Yeah, and you don't know, because Pedroia was out of the lineup at the same time as Hanley was, and they kind of turned it around with the young kids, this, that, and the other thing. But
this may or may not be a popular thought, but I think it might be time to move on from Pedroia.
And would he bring anything?
That's what I mean. That's why I think that it's time, because I think he would bring something, especially to a contender. Still a great competitor. Excellent defensive second baseman, still an above-average hitter. For the position.
And certainly has that fire. We talked about.
And a change of scenery for him, also would be probably a good thing, and could help put a contender over the edge, or over the top. So.
I mean, at the All-Star break, you said the Red Sox,
he's definitely
could be a buy or
sliding,
sell,
a little bit, downhill. At least that's been the trajectory the last 2 or 3 years, and you have to wonder if he's going to break down here in the next couple of years, given his stature and how many miles he has on him.
Right. Yeah, and then the guy like Brock Holt, who's really utility man, not really a starter, has proven that he can play pretty much anywhere. So if you want to make that move, throw him at second base to finish out the season.
Well, yeah, for this year. But I think Brock Holt's value is in his flexibility and the fact that he can give guys a rest and really play any position in a pinch. I think if you make Brock Holt a regular, whether it be second base or right field or left field or wherever it is, he gets exposed. I think he'd get exposed over the long haul, 162-game season. So, if he's your first guy off the bench, I think that's a good thing. If he's a regular starter, and not too sure.
He'd be batting ninth probably, and would, like you said, I think he would be exposed.
Yeah, but I do think for the first time in a long time, with Bogarts and Betts, they have two really good, young position players that are going to grow into being top flight guys on this team.
And you'd have to say of the players who are going to go, and obviously I think that the Red Sox are going to be, the sellers.
Yeah,
I think it was at the 27th, I believe, or right around there is the 31st. 31st is the deadline coming up, and there was always the constant talk about Cole Hamels. Obviously, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. You don't know. I
don't know what the Phillies are doing. What are they waiting for?
I don't know. And then there was some talk about Papelbon being moved soon, but that team is just ready to be broken up. And it has been for a while.
Well, and the same for the Red Sox. Why do they still have Koji on this team? Trade Koji to a contender. You could probably get a good piece back. Look what you got for Andrew Miller last year. For Andrew Miller, who wasn't even closing, you got Eduardo Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. So Koji's a guy who's been a very successful closer the last couple of years. A lot of contenders need one. Look at the Blue Jays. They have no bullpen.
Right. Yeah.
You don't think that they'd want a guy like that?
Yeah,
and that's been a rumored spot for Papelbon actually too.
Right. Yeah. It's certainly one of those things. With that killer lineup for the Blue Jays, that pitching has really kind of let them down a little bit. But anyway, let's just shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the 2015 Major League Baseball Hall of Fame inductees. And I think pretty much all deserving, although you might have a little argument, I think, with Craig Biggio kind of on the fence. A lot of people. So you hear both ways. Some people in favor, some people not so much. But some of these players in the juicing era, obviously not knocking a guy like him out of that kind of realm. But Pedro Martinez, of course, will be one of the inductees. Craig Biggio, just mentioned. John Smoltz, I think, a no-brainer, and Randy Johnson as well.
You think Smoltz is a no-brainer?
I think so. I think the numbers are there. And then he actually was converted a closer, I think, during his career as well.
He's one of the few guys, I think, in Major League history that has 200 wins and 150 saves. Won a Cy Young, won one World Series. Definitely a guy who was pretty consistent throughout his career. Doesn't have eye-popping numbers from a win standpoint. Yeah. Neither does Pedro, for that matter, but Pedro was just so dominant for that time.
There was an era, in the late 90s into the 2000, really almost to the 2004 championship. But some of those numbers in the late 90s, early 2000s, I don't think anyone would ever forget that 99 All-Star game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the pitchers from that era get a boost because they were competing against juiced-up lineups.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And to do what Pedro did during that time span was just unreal, the numbers that he put up from an ERA standpoint, strikeouts.
Amazing.
Wins.
And for a guy, we talked about Buchholz, breaking down. He was a pretty reliable pitcher.
I think he was only really hurt 1 year.
Yeah.
Right? Well, and it's interesting. It seems like Pedro was here for a long time, right? He was only here for 7 years.
Yeah, but the impact of what he did during that years.
Right.
And he came over from Montreal Expos,
right,
and going back to when the Montreal Expos before they moved to Washington to become the Washington Nationals.
How many Cy Youngs did he end up with? 3 or 4? 3, I think.
I think 3.
And I think he finished second twice.
A couple times, yeah.
I remember one of those years he finished second to Barry Zito, who never did anything again after that.
Barry Zito went over to the Giants and kind of disappeared into the.
And that was kind of controversial at the time. I think Pedro had better numbers that year. But.
Yeah, and then there was one of the famous lines where he just goes, "The Yankees are my daddy." He had some classic lines, of course. The
Don Zimmer.
The Don Zimmer incident, following the Veritek A-Rod fight, a classic that really kind of spurred the Red Sox on in 2004.
Grady Little in 03, the ALCS.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Kept him in, and we know what happens.
And then
Aaron
04, being a big part of that team rotation
yeah.
in his last season here, actually.
Yeah, before going up, I think finished his career with the Mets, I believe.
Well, he left and went to the Mets, and yeah, he had one really good year with the Mets, and then started getting hurt after that, and then I believe he retired for a year or didn't play for a year, and then he came back with the Phillies for one season.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe a half a season, or he tried to come back.
It was later in the year, yeah. And they were still a contender at that point. But I think his career record ended up being what, like 219 and 100? Can you imagine if he didn't come back that last year and get one more loss? He would have had less than 100 losses.
Less than 100 losses over his career. Would have been
with over 200 wins.
Yeah, but still eye-popping. Pedro Martinez is just, I mean, we used to call it like appointment television. You just watch his one start and just mesmerize what he could do.
And there aren't a lot of guys who, played their whole career, or the majority of their career with the Red Sox that have gone in, with the cap. Who's the last one? Boggs?
Yeah, and then he
didn't even want to go in with the Red Sox.
Yeah, what we want Yankees or Tampa Bay? I think Tampa Bay winds up going in as a.
Well, and I think it's good that the Hall of Fame now makes the decision on what cap these guys wear, on their plaque, because you are seeing some crazy ones like Dave Winfield went in as a Padre, and Boggs wanted to go in as a Tampa Bay Ray, and I think that's actually why they made that switch. So. What's Randy Johnson going in as? Diamondback?
I'd say Diamondback. Yeah. I mean, he pitched with
Seattle.
For a big part of those, pretty good Seattle teams. But he won co-MVPs in that 2001 World Series with Curt Schilling.
Right.
Memorable. Of course, had a 20 strikeout game. In his career.
How many Cy's did he win? 4 or 5? He won a lot.
Yeah, I think 4 Cy Youngs. I think.
Yeah. And for a guy who didn't really come into his own until he was almost like 30 years old, to win 300 games, that's incredible. Yeah. He's definitely going to be one of the last guys you'll ever see win 300.
Yeah, I agree.
Him and Maddox.
Yeah, long career, and of course, one of the signature things, pitching in the All-Star game against John Kruk.
Right.
John Kruk couldn't.
And Larry Walker.
That was Larry Walker, and he couldn't even stay in the batter's box. Yeah. It was just a total mismatch.
Biggio's to me is one of those guys who, he gets in because of the counting stats, right? He got to 3,000 hits, and I don't think anyone that has 3,000 hits has never been voted in, except for Pete Rose, who that's
a separate show right there. Now Biggio, did he play 19 years all with the Astros? Something like that?
Yeah.
That's a long time. And then you hit Bagwell.
Well, I was just going to say, so you think of the Astros, right? And they had some good teams during that time period, and they went to at least one World Series.
Right, 05.
Who was the best player on that team? It was Bagwell. It wasn't Biggio. Yeah. And the only reason that Bagwell's not in, because his numbers are deserving, is because of steroid accusations. Yep. Even though he's never been caught. So that's what makes this era very, very tricky.
It is, and I think that's why someone like Biggio can get in.
I think Biggio got into because he was kind of an under the radar guy, a guy that was perceived as not a steroid guy, was an all-star at multiple positions. Remember, he was a catcher,
right? That's right.
And then he became a second baseman.
Right.
Consistent, dependable guy, but never one who I ever looked at as one of the 5 or 10 best players in baseball. Which to me means he's not a Hall of Fame.
And Caminiti was on that team, I believe.
He was on.
He was super juicer
for a while. Yeah.
But anyway, that. Interesting group this year. Some years you don't even get that many, so it's kind of a surprise.
Wasn't Frank Thomas the only one who made it last year?
I believe it was him. Was it him and another person, or was it just him by himself?
I think he was the only modern day guy.
Yeah. Interesting. So maybe baseball writers maybe loosening there.
Who's up next year? Do you know?
I'd have to take a look at the numbers. See who's been out of baseball.
Griffey, right? Griffey's coming up soon.
He should be a shoo-in.
Yeah.
You'd have to say. Yeah. But anyway, let's take a look around baseball. We'll find out what what some good teams are doing. I will start off in the American League East. In the Yankees, I don't know how. I'm still not impressed with this team. Just enough to win.
A-Rod and Teixeira don't impress you?
No, they don't.
A-Rod's having a heck of a year when you look at his numbers. A guy that I don't think. Never mind, the Yankees didn't expect much out of. They didn't even want him on the team, and he's really
and they also
for them. He's got 19 home runs.
Yeah, and one of those home runs, actually for his 3,000th home run hit, was a home run.
Right.
And I think they had some type of
had
clause,
a-
historic numbers or something.
Right.
Yankees and A-Rod both said we're going to split this and give it to charity. I think
Yeah.
they came to some type of agreement on that.
And Teixeira's got over 20 home runs as well. Another guy that's kind of come back out of nowhere.
He had a lot of
after
injuries.
a few down years.
In his back. Andrew Miller is now back pitching.
Yeah, closing for them.
I
mean, why didn't I always wonder this. Why didn't the Red Sox use him as a closer or attempt to?
I think but they gave up on it really early on, I think.
Well, and the crazy thing is they traded him to Baltimore last year. They got Rodriguez, and then they had the opportunity to re-sign him in the offseason. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's not like he's making crazy money either.
No, is it Charrington? Is he he's involved there, or is it the management too involved? It's
both.
It's
both.
Yeah, it's both, and it's all bad. But anyway, we'll take a look over at the Central Division and Kansas City Royals. They continue to win, and now have opened up a 6.5 game lead. Tigers without Miggy. Starting to hurt. Red Sox.
Talking about the Tigers being sellers, actually, you got David Price and Yoenis Cespedes, who are both going to be free agents at the end of the season. So I've heard both their names in potential trade talks.
Yeah, and I mean, we're currently below 500.
Right. Miggy's hurt. Verlander's been out most of the season. Obviously, they lost Scherzer to Washington in the offseason.
Yeah, that hurts them because he really was kind of moving up as the ace.
Victor Martinez has been hurt most of the year too, but he's back now and he's actually tearing it up. So who knows? Maybe they can get back.
But you have to say right now, the Detroit Tigers have a little bit of work to do to catch this because Kansas City has been hot.
Well, and you'd have to say that the Minnesota Twins are kind of the surprise of that division there.
Definitely a surprise. At 7 games over 500.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a team a lot of people had them in the
How
cellar.
many Twins can you name?
I know Joe Mauer is still with the team.
Yeah.
Really not a lot.
Yeah. Brian Dozier, second baseman,
a
all-star this year.
Glenn Perkins, the closer.
Yeah.
But kind of a no-name for years and years and years. A lot of talent on that team, and but whatever. So
Francona's struggling, huh? Cleveland.
Yeah, kind of a disappointing year for them. I thought Cleveland might have could have been in wild card competition. Still have some games to play, but 12 games out. The Royals look like they're in the driver's seat there.
Don't you feel like the White Sox are perpetually mediocre?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't
always.
know. Yeah. Ever since what was it the coach there,
Ozzie Guillen.
Ozzie Guillen.
Yeah.
Kind of lit a fire.
They like their ex-players though. They went from Ozzie Guillen to Robin Ventura.
Yep. They keep them around. Yeah. All in the family. Then take a look over in the American League West. The Astros have dropped out of first place, but not by a lot. They had led most of the season.
Right.
Angels,
Mike Trout, Albert Pujols. Talk about a big comeback year. Pujols has been great this year.
Huge. And watching that Red Sox Angels series over the weekend, I think Pujols and Trout could have beaten the Red Sox. Just 2 players against 9.
Yep.
It is that far different talent ratio. And Angels driven right now. They're into first place.
Trout, best player in baseball.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you saw him in the All-Star game, just the first inning, the first 2 innings that you see him playing, just go, this guy's the real deal. Astros hanging in there. I think the Astros. I think they're going to make that playoff. I think they're going to be in the playoffs this year.
Carlos Correa, the shortstop, is unreal. He was a #1 pick in the draft like 2 years ago, and they just called him up month and a half, 2 months ago, and he's tearing it up for them.
Yeah, and then
shortstop.
Altuve also.
They have a ton of good young players. Yeah, Altuve, George Springer, who's hurt right now, but yeah, some good young pitchers too.
Yeah, so the Astros look good. Was it actually Dallas Keuchel?
Yeah,
Keuchel
started the All-Star
game.
Yep.
So actually, a lot of people, Astros are kind of ahead of schedule for getting into the playoffs.
I still can't get used to them being in the American League. I
know.
still think of them as a National League team.
Yeah, National League Central, National League West.
Yeah,
that's where they always live. It's tough. I mean, the Brewers, I've totally accepted them as a National League team now.
Why didn't they just move the Brewers back?
I don't know.
That makes no sense.
No sense why any of these things happen. Mariners, you got to say, very disappointing season. Cano, total power outage out there out in Seattle.
Hasn't affected Nelson Cruz, but yeah, Cano.
Yeah, I know.
Well, if you think about it, right, how easy is it to hit home runs in the new Yankee Stadium, especially for a left-handed hitter?
It's true.
So
Yeah.
that probably inflated a lot of his numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Stephen Drew,
I
of
know.
all people,
I know.
and even Ellsbury too.
Ellsbury's
Maybe not
putting
this
it
year,
out,
but
but-
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you pretty much go from the easiest home run park to maybe one of the toughest in
Right.
all of baseball
Right.
out in Seattle.
I think Seattle's maybe a harder place to hit than even San Diego has been.
San Diego, I think they actually moved the fences in.
They did,
in San
yeah.
Diego. And then quickly, we'll take a look over the National League. The National League East, the Nationals, Mets hanging around this year.
They have great pitching, no offense.
Yeah. But the
You wonder if they'll make a deal for
they
a
might,
bat.
maybe
Pablo. Hanley.
take them, please.
Pablo.
Somebody. And the Nationals look like the real deal. I mean, they got the talent.
Yeah.
They got
Bryce Harper.
Bryce Harper is
Yeah,
the
Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's two of the best players in baseball right there.
Yeah, and obviously the the Marlins, you didn't expect much. Phillies, they got to break that up. Send some of those
Awful.
people around. The brutal team they were last year.
For a team that dominated the National League for probably what,
Yes.
3, 4, 5 years in the,
Yeah,
last
back-
decade.
Yeah,
It's
back-to-back
been
World
so bad.
back-to-back World Series.
Yeah.
And now total power.
That was
outage
only
on
what,
it.
like 08, 09 or
Yeah,
so?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And then over in the Central Division, Cardinals, Pittsburgh making
Cardinals every year, man.
I don't
Every
know how
year.
they do it, even with
Every
the
year.
injuries to Wainwright and
Yeah.
some of these other players. Cardinals are
And,
just,
and they trade Shelby Miller in the offseason, and he's been awesome for the Braves, and they don't even miss a beat.
Yeah.
We'll just slide Carlos Martinez into the rotation. He's got he's 10-3. Walker's 10-3.
and it doesn't matter, like whatever lineup is out there, the
Yeah.
Cardinals.
Lance Lynn, all these guys.
Yeah, unstoppable. And then the lineup. Actually, Justin Hayward, they picked up from
Jason Hayward.
Jason Hayward
Yeah.
from Atlanta.
Yeah. Who I think is very overrated, but he's starting to pick it up now.
Yeah, he's in the winning environment there.
Yeah. They just got Matt Holliday back off the DL
huge.
too.
That's huge. So the Cardinals definitely a contender every year. They look like they're going to be there.
They've
again.
even just called up a couple of bats that have played well for them as well. A couple outfielders.
So I mean, they're a machine. They really are. They're the new red machine.
Yeah.
The Cubs. The Pirates are getting a little bit better there as long as they can stay healthy. The Cubs,
Pirates, a team that was awful forever, right?
Yeah.
This is now what, probably their third good year in a row. So
Yeah,
I'd
so
like to see that.
competitive. And then Brewers break them up, and probably Cincinnati Reds. Some pieces to be sold off there.
Right. You think the Cubbies will make the playoffs?
It's tough.
Theo's done a nice job there. I mean, they had some really bad years
Right.
when he was trying to rebuild it, but starting to see it come to fruition there. And they got a lot of young talent too, just like the Astros.
Yeah, and just
Chris
keep
Bryant.
going. Rizzo.
Rizzo.
They get some players, of course. John Lester.
Rizzo could be your first baseman right now.
Yeah, imagine that. And then finally, over in the National League West, looks like a two-team race. Dodgers, Giants. Pretty much how it's kind of always is. So
I mean, the Dodgers have probably 2 of the 3 best starting pitchers in the National League with Kershaw and Greinke. Along with Scherzer.
and Kershaw not even having his lights out type of year, but still for him.
He's coming around. Yeah, he's really picked it up recently.
Yeah, but can he get it done in the postseason? That's
yeah.
could be something in his head
crazy.
there. And
The
that's
Giants just always around too.
always
Giants
hanging around. And they've won what 3 out of the last 5 World Series.
Yeah.
Under the radar. Yeah.
Totally under the radar.
Yeah.
How do you win
We've
3
brought-
out of 5 World Series and still no one really even talks about you?
Maybe for West Coast, it's just West Coast baseball.
could be
who
it.
knows? So
That could
that's
be
a look around the major leagues.
Great ballpark though.
And I'm dying to get there. You've been there, right?
I've been there a couple times.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, outstanding. That's on the list, the bucket list. And then finally, the Red Sox will be in Detroit this. Actually, Detroit will be coming here this weekend, and Porcello's going to get the start on Friday, and Verlander that'll be the Friday night game, and then Rodriguez.
Alfredo
Simon, and then Brian Johnson and Shane Green. Shane Green
ex-Yankee.
on I guess they moved that to the Sunday night game. Why I don't know. Ratings. I don't know why they do that, but anyway, a quick half hour. BK, a lot of fun. Nice seeing you at Foo Fighters. A fabulous show, and a big shout out to Danny Lacrosse. Rookie job. Looks like he did a great job. So anyway, enjoy your Red Sox baseball, but Patriots preseason right around the corner. So we'll see you next time on The Hit Show. See you later.
It was the most exciting thing that happened in Fenway all season.
Foo Fighters.
I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you about